Harry Potter has been getting a lot of attention lately, and you know that's kind of weird, being that it ended last year. But people still talk about it, and I see blog posts all the time talking about how, ooh, Harry Potter is the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life, and I'm like, ah, oh, really? There goes your credibility as soon as someone says something like that. And it's not like, you know, jokingly or anything. It's serious. They think Harry Potter is the greatest movie ever, or series of movies ever. Stanley Kubrick, Federico Fellini, they don't have any credibility. Just, you know, the David Yates film about the kid who does magic. That is the best movie. That is the seminal, you know, filmmaking right there. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is probably the greatest fantasy series ever. Fantasy here defined as, you know, a world of magic and elves, that sort of. Not science fiction fantasy, or science fiction fantasy, or any other kind of fantastical events. Very specifically, we're introduced to a new magical world, that kind of fantasy. And Lord of the Rings is the best because you are totally submerged in this whole new world. Movies like Narnia, or Labyrinth, or Jim Henson's Labyrinth, in case you're wondering, or Pan's Labyrinth too, actually, works too. Any movie like that, it starts out with our standard, boring, insert yourself here character who accidentally goes from our world into a magical world, or discovers a magic world within our world through various means. And they do that for a couple of reasons. They do that so that the character, the human character, so we'll be able to relate to them. We'll have a character that we can relate to when they go into the world, so that they don't actually have to try too hard to have us relate to a character. And it's hard to have us relate to that character. Also, they do it so that they can explain things. This is a classic piece of, you know, movie making. They do it all the time. They'll have one character that, usually the main character, who has no idea what's going on, because the audience has no idea what's going on. Then our other characters can explain it to him, and thus explaining it to the audience. And it is very hard to go into this weird magical world where nothing is explained with a bunch of people who knows it. You don't watch that. You don't do that most of the time because those characters aren't going to explain it. They're not going to be like, oh, hi, there's those magical things I see every day, and I'm going to explain the purpose of to no one in particular. That wouldn't make any sense. That'd be silly. And that's why they have these characters. Lord of the Rings is one of the only movies I've seen that creates a magical world without any influence from our world. Without a kid who lives in the normal British area, but then becomes a wizard, any of that kind of thing. And allows us to pull into it. And that works great, because fantasy is an escapist medium. It's escapist genre. We want to go into a new world. We want to escape this world. We don't want to be reminded of this world. And that's why it is better. That's not just the only reason, but that's a lot of the reason why it goes beyond movies like Harry Potter and Narnia and the Spiderwick Chronicles and all, you know, just those sort of movies, especially the Spiderwick Chronicles. And it's just because it's not, and I love, that's not the only thing I like about Lord of the Rings. It's epic, it's great, but it is one of the only movies that successfully creates a whole new world without any attachment to our world. And that's just brilliant. It's brilliant how they do it. And, you know, Lord of the Rings isn't my favorite movie of all time, but it's probably, I haven't seen all of them, but it's probably the greatest fantasy trilogy of all time. I hope The Hobbit doesn't ruin it. I'm crossing my fingers.